record to this computer. So we're recording. So we just wanted to have a empathy circle together, about you taking part in the training, and thought we would use empathic listening, just do an empathy circle on the topic. Does that work? I
Yes.
I could start if that works, or
Yes. Go ahead. Yeah.
okay. So I just wanted to kind of just kind of give a context for what I understand here. So I understand that you want to take the Empathy Circle Facilitator Training, and I want to find out a way to, work together to make that happen, somehow. And so I'm appreciating the time to just, talk about it, kind of clarify the issues and kind of try to see what we can come up with for a solution that kind of works for everyone.
Yeah. So you're setting up the context. You're naming that I'd like to participate in the Building Culture of Empathy Circle Facilitator Training, and you'd like to brainstorm, think about, and talk about a path to making that happen.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm kind of coming from the principles that I have. So one of them is that I want everybody to learn to take part in an empathy circle, to be able to facilitate them. And I have no blocks to anybody learning that. It's like if there's a psychopath, a mass murderer in San Quentin, I want them to learn how to do an empathy circle.
So the principle is let's make learning these valuable skills available to anyone, especially people who are so-called psychopaths or outcasts of society in some way. You want in principle for that to be available to anyone.
Yeah, I just see it's a contribution. It contributes to everybody's well-being. If everybody can just learn this simple process, that they can learn to be a facilitator of a process, I think it just contributes to everybody's well-being. So it's sort of, yeah, it's part of my sense of creating a better world, right? Yeah.
So it contributes to a sense of well-being. It contributes to well-being for people to participate, to learn, and it contributes to building a better world, the world you want.
Yeah, and in setting up sort of a process for doing this, we have facilitator trainers who are training, how to facilitate empathy circles. And so I just have a principle for myself. Well, every trainer can kind of decide who they have in their cohort. They form a cohort, they're responsible for that cohort. In terms of spreading the practice, I don't want to be, managing everybody, and what, who they have in their cohorts. So that's the other principle that I'm operating from, is if you're a trainer, you decide who's in your cohort.
You want to delegate responsibility and freedom, creative, artistic, license for the facilitators who are running trainings to determine who is in their cohort in their individual particular training,
and
rather
there's
than
certain,
dictating.
yeah, exactly. I don't want to go micromanage, who they decide to have into their cohort. But I do want to have a set of principles. It's like the principle that we want everyone to be part of it. That if there's some kind of problems, that we have some kind of mechanism for the criteria of being part of it, and the criteria, if there's problems, how do you exclude or include, and what's the appeals process and all that kind of stuff. So it's good to lay all those kind of issues out. And I see that that's kind of what you can kind of help with here is, we have a discussion, how do we set that up? That's kind of open, inclusive, but yet, you got to have some kind of boundaries and shared responsibilities. And so, yeah, so I appreciate being able to talk to you about that.
I think you're saying that as you move to do trainings, you'd like established norms, principles, and practices for navigating issues and snags that come up around people who might want to exclude others, or other issues that come up about these decisions. And
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And so in the cohorts that have been set up, facilitated by trainers, Lou and Bill, I'm kind of doing overall website development, kind of just supporting all this, but I'm not one of the trainers per se. That, you know, they've decided, well, they don't want you in the training, and, you know, that's been an issue. So there's been that issue, conflict has come up about it. So that's sort of the context. That, and, you know, I'm just kind of wanting to discuss, you know, what can we do? Because I do want you to be able to take some training.
So with Bill and Lou, in the context of their training that they've chosen to exclude me from, I think I lost the
Yeah,
other thing.
You know, I do want you to, that it's their choice. I do want to see what is some way that we can work out that you can do a training, or, you know, how do we maybe articulate some of the processes, the appeals process, you know, for taking part, and you know, just all that, you just kind of go, and that's what this discussion is about, is to how to, you know, for me at least, how to address those issues.
You want to address the issues and think about how we can do it.
Yeah, I could go on and on, but I want
That's
to give
time,
you
yeah.
time and space.
Yeah.
I wasn't
Yeah.
keeping time, but I was just
Yeah.
give time and you know, I just have a sense that, you know, give you time too. So yeah, I feel heard.
Yeah, absolutely. I was keeping time. It went over a little bit, but that's fine. So I'll talk. Yeah. Well, so this is an area of great interest for me, and it's something I am doing in the joining game simultaneously around a quote unquote problematic individual who I don't want to exclude, but also creates challenges. And so I do want to participate in the facilitator trainings. And I agree, I think, with 99% of what you said. I want you to be able to delegate. I want any leader, organizer to be able to delegate. People have the freedom to choose who's participating. And I find myself in a predicament, which is that I don't know what's going on. I feel a little bit like the reason I don't know what's going on. So you talk about the trainers choosing their cohorts. I think trainings have been going on now for a couple of months, and it's the same trainers doing it. Great, right? You want that to last and for them to continue doing it.
Can I reflect that maybe?
Yeah.
So yeah, so I'm hearing that you don't understand what's really going on. You're kind of sharing your understanding that there's been several trainings that are ongoing. There's consistent trainers who have been doing that, and you can understand that. And you have an agreement, I'm hearing an agreement, about 99% of kind of what I was sharing, you agree with that, but there's sort of a 1% that is an issue. And you're also dealing with this issue in your own group in terms of how do you include and exclude people. And so it sounds like a thing you're trying to work through as well.
Yeah. I'll just be blunt about it, right? I have given up. I have tried to find a way to be included or to work with the team. I know it's amorphous. Don't see a way to do it. So I'm given up. I do come across these posts, and the idea of these posts being out there in the world and me not having a clear way to participate, but also that this story or situation is not known, disturbs me. I'm not saying that that's just because it disturbs me that it's, so yeah, I called you and the organizers and the facilitators assholes, and that the training is problematic. And that's a very problematic way to engage in my criticism. But I feel a little bit like a castaway on a rowboat, like it's difficult. So you mentioned, in some of the circles, you mentioned wanting to work with me on maybe creating our own training cohort or something like that. And I believe you, and I realize that just even for myself, I could probably do more to reach out and take that seriously. And yeah.
Okay, let me reflect that.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
I'm hearing you're seeing that there's these cohorts going, there's these posts going, and you see the cohorts being posted, and you had initially wanted to take the training, you weren't accepted into it, and then it sounds like there's no clear sort of appeals process, sort of, or sort of a reintegration or what, or kind of overcome that boundary of not being taken into it. And then you're feeling some frustration. How do you, on one hand it sounds like you've kind of given up, but then the other hand it's like you kind of want it to be known publicly, because otherwise it would just be kind of swept under the rug or something.
Right, yes, but... that is right. 95% of me, I've given up on attempting to be involved in a meaningful way, because I don't feel any real interest in involving me beyond you. I don't feel that the other people, and I don't even know exactly who they are, because it would take a full-time job to continue to research it and figure out what's going on. I don't experience there being any consideration or concern that I was excluded. It's kind of like, oh, we don't care if you do whatever you want on your own without us. Well, then I'll go and do it without. I mean, what am I going to do? Like, go and sit in your group's corner by myself? It doesn't make sense to me. So.
Yeah. So you were excluded, from the training cohort, and you don't see any sort of outreach. It's just like, this is it. I mean, this is the situation. There's no kind of a trying to bridge that boundary coming from the trainers or the organizers, except for me. And so it's like, how do you deal with that? What's about the outreach? Sounds like,
just in terms of principles, for me, my understanding of the protective use of force is that it is the minimum amount applied necessary to accomplish goals. And that if you use force and leave it there permanently, that's not protective use of force. That's a form of violence. So I would expect there to be some active attempt to reintegrate me, include me, rather than just saying, well, we kicked you out, now you can climb to the top of the mountain again, and we won't even give you the time of day. It's kind of like, are there multiple cohorts going on? There's multiple trainings, and the idea is to permanently exclude me forever? I mean, I wouldn't even talk to Bill and Lou about this if you weren't involved. It's the fact that you are willing to talk to me that I even bother to curse and be angry about it, because I know maybe there's a chance of you responding. But I mean, even on a practical level between you and me, it's my time, but I don't know what you're doing, so I don't know how to be involved. It's kind of, there's a bureaucratic barrier to being involved now.
So you're seeing sort of a bureaucratic barrier. It sounds like you would like to be involved in the work that I'm doing, or the culture of empathy in the Empathy Circle training is doing. You would like to be involved, but there's sort of not a boundary, but a bureaucracy of how do you even have involvement. And so it's just like, not knowing what the steps are, or
there's a word, that means kind of like a friendly atmosphere to work together. It's not just that I can, begrudgingly be accepted. I think it's hard to work together if there isn't a friendly atmosphere of information sharing and openness.
Yeah, so you'd like to have an open, friendly atmosphere for, oh, how do we work together? How do we resolve this? Versus, well, I don't want to do this, but it's kind of have to do it, and sort of a begrudging sort of an attitude.
Yes, and that's my time, so I'll pass to you.
Okay, yeah. Well, that's the kind of thing I'm kind of looking at developing. Is there, I do think that there should be some kind of appeals process. How do you appeal that? And, and with protective use of force, I see that too, is you still want to have an open heart to people, that even if you have to create some kind of a boundary to do some kind of, stop something, damage or something, whatever that is, from happening. So yeah, I kind of have that sense too.
So you want to maintain an open heart even towards individuals, even when you use force to enforce some,
Some rule,
foundational
some process,
rule.
yeah. So yeah, so in terms of, I'm not even sure where to really go. It's like, it seems to have some kind of, I have the principles that I've been trying to develop for a culture of empathy. And, one of the principles is that we try to reach out to as wide a variety of people. Don't stay within a liberal bubble or a conservative bubble. Try to actively reach out to as many people as possible, just on an ongoing basis. So that's sort of like the first principle, I think, of a culture of empathy, is sort of not only willing to reach out, if you say like begrudgingly, but hey, I do want to reach out. Give me the challenges, let's go reach out to the people who are challenging or whatever. So yeah.
You're not sure what steps you want to take, but you're just clarifying or renaming the principles. One of them being wanting to reach out to a diverse group, not just talk to people in our own bubbles, like a liberal bubble or conservative bubble, but to actively reach out to people who may be more challenging to work with, to include them as well.
Yeah, and then another principle is, if there is a conflict, is an agreement to keep at it, to work out the conflicts through an empathy circle, not the shouting match, but I'm willing to work in an empathy circle with anyone, for as long as it takes to kind of work out the issues of a conflict, and just having sort of a value and a sort of an agreement, principle of that.
Continuing to work through, to have dialogue, to work out the differences, not a screaming match, but to stay with it in empathy circles and empathic dialogue.
Yeah,
over
you
time.
can have a screaming match in an empathy dialogue. It's fine. People can scream in an empathy circle, but I mean, without the structure of the empathy circle, just, that I don't find very helpful. But a screaming match within the empathy circle, I'm okay with.
Yeah, so screaming, you are okay with screaming within a structure.
Yeah. And that you're heard, your scream is heard, but then you got to be willing to listen to the scream of the other person to hear them to their satisfaction. So I'm good with that. That's a principle. Yeah. So I just want to be clear about what I was meaning, that it's just, an empathy circle versus just a dialogue without any clear rules, so.
You want to emphasize what you mean is that an empathy circle with clear rules provides a structure, even with screaming, that enables constructive dialogue to happen.
And the other principle, maybe the fourth principle, is I am willing to offer just to listen to people. If they're not ready to listen to me, I'm willing to go, okay, I'm here. Here's an hour, here's half an hour. I will just empathically listen to you. If that works for you, you don't even have to listen to me. So I'm willing to take the first step to reach out to listen empathically, with the hope that we can turn it into, eventually, once the person feels heard, we can turn it into a mutual empathic listening process.
So I think you're saying a second step, and that's time, but a second step is, if a person is not willing to listen, it's a principle that you want to uphold, to make yourself available to listen to them, with the idea that that may create an opening for them to listen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's just the outline of some basic principles that I'm trying to bring into this issue. And with that, I feel heard. Yeah.
I think it's useful to have a place, like a home base, to work together. And I don't know about the building a culture of empathy, how they work together. I've never been invited to what I would call like a workspace environment. I've been invited to empathy circles, maybe the empathy, the facilitator support group. For my group, we have recently been building a space in Discord, which is a way of organizing different conversation topics that has been, I found, very useful. There may only be a few people involved, but it's it's a workspace. Like if you have something to say to somebody, it's where you go to work it out. And I mean, obviously, lots of people have workspaces. They don't necessarily have conflict processes or spaces within their workspaces. So that's ideally, if I was involved in the building culture of empathy team, and maybe that's a different topic than participating in the facilitator training, I would like there to be a workspace, like where there's communication, open communication about the work that's happening, not just individual lines of communication, which is what I have, maybe, a line with you, lines that I've sent out to other people in that community. I've had problems with keeping them or getting a response. Again, that's why I've given up, but I haven't given up on working on creating spaces and processes for these kinds of situations. About the screaming. Actually, never mind. I agree with you about it. I would like you to come to one of our meetings, the joining game. We do a meeting every day. I think it would be valuable to our working relationship between you and me if you were to come there once. It's not something that I want to force you to do, or anybody to do. But being that there is this ongoing kind of conflict, it's problematic for me for a number of reasons to be only participating in spaces that I would consider, led by you. And I don't have a problem going into spaces led by other people, but there is some, I don't know, ambiguity about leadership, where you're taking on leadership when it's convenient, and then when it's impacting me, you're conveniently saying, well, it's not your, it's not part of your role in this. So I don't know how to, I don't know how to untangle that. Maybe if you could reflect some of
Okay,
that.
so the first part was about that you're wondering about the, so the workspaces within a culture of empathy. You know, what you haven't taken part in any of the workspaces where we actually try to do things, except for the facilitator support group. And then there's sort of a, I was hearing sort of a concept of a workspace, but then that there's also a space for working out conflict specifically that might come out up in the workspace. So there's this special space that's just for addressing conflict. And then there's also, so I was hearing that you come into the space that I've sort of set up, you know, with the empathy circle. So there's a certain leadership role that I have, and you're inviting me to come to a space that you've set up and that you would like me to come to that. And there's something about coming into your space that, I don't know, something, I'm hearing that something might arise out of that. Some kind of a shift, something would happen. It is, I wasn't clear on what would happen, but maybe I'd have more understanding of who you are or something, or I don't know, it's not quite clear.
Well, yeah, it's, I think it's,
Oh, and you're trying to untangle it yourself. I was hearing there was
yeah,
issues there that you weren't even clear about, but it sounds
yes.
like maybe energetically you have a sense of something would sort of shift, but you're not able to, you know, clearly articulate that yet. Or
Yes, yes, that's true. Um, yeah, that's right. I don't have my phone, so I'm keeping track of time by memory, and it's not working so well. Anyway, that's my time. So over to you.
okay. Yeah, I'd be willing to come to, you know, one of your joining game events just to see how it works. I've tended to be very focused, you know, I get kind of like laser focused on the empathy circle because it's, you know, there's so many different practices out there, you know, NVC, motivational interview. I mean, you go on and on. There's so many different practices. And the thing I've been trying to do is just focus on this one simple process, throw all my energy into it and see if I can kind of just spread this one practice. And that, you know, 'cause I've done all kinds of deep stuff. I lived at Esalen for a year, you know, I don't know if you know Esalen,
I
but
do.
yeah, I mean, you know, I've done all these things, the deep, the profound, the, you know, peak experience stuff, but I'm really looking at just, can we get the full, and I'm saying, oh, that's all good and well, but it's not really changing the overall culture. So my idea is to have cultural shift to, you know, just have this one simple practice. If we can spread it widely, get everybody in the world to learn it, that, you know, that's already a big contribution. So that's kind of where I'm focused.
You're open to coming to one of my activities. You've tended to be, you tend to be focused, laser-like focused on this specific empathy circle format. And personally, you've just tried different things that you don't quite think that those things impact the culture in the way that you'd like the culture to be impacted, or the impact that you'd like to have.
Yeah, it seems like the culture, to make a cultural shift, one little step, you know, the empathy circle is already a huge step. If I can get, you know, take the empathy tent, camp out in front of the White House and have Joe Biden demand that Joe Biden do an empathy circle with Mitch McConnell or whatever, you know, that this one practice, I think, has could have real effect. And it's just, you only have so much resources, only so much time. And so that's why I kind of like focus, you know, on this one, you know, one thing. If I can just get this one little thing into the culture, I think it would do a lot. Yeah. Not that the others are fantastic things, but they take more. Like if you do NVC, I mean, it takes you years to go learn NVC, right? All the feelings and needs, and you got to pay $400 for all these workshops and everything. So, this is something we can just spread quickly and widely is sort of the point I'm coming from.
So you're not disparaging other activities and practices, systems, but you feel like it's hard to have an impact on the culture. And so this is the one seemingly small, but possibly potentially impactful effect you could have.
Yeah, and the thing that you're doing with joining game, kind of this concept of being in agreement and then being aware of when you go outside of an agreement, when you're kind of shifting, that's really interesting. I find it very, that's an interesting insight, and to have that awareness and to be practicing that. So it seems like a interesting sort of a concept or a skill. It's an awareness, right? It's an awareness to know when we are in agreement and when we've kind of shifted out of agreement, and to actually make a request. Hey, can we go into out of an agreement? And so it's I see the value in it.
You see the value in noticing when we're in agreement and when we go out of agreement. There's value to developing that skill and awareness.
Yeah, and I come back to, it's like someone that you want to take part in Empathy Circle, facilitator training, and there's right now the level I'm at, there's only 2 groups who are sort of training, the Bill and Lou and Carolina and Martha. And I'm trying to set up a structure that's reproducible and kind of go to the next level where we're starting to train the trainers, right? So I would like to have multiple teams who are starting to go and able to facilitate Empathy Circle Facilitator Training, so it can kind of like scale, you can just kind of so then there'd be multiple groups that could kind of facilitate that training, and there might be groups that say, hey, you're welcome, and other groups that you're not welcome, so kind of like that.
That's time.
Okay.
You're wanting to go to the next level of organization where there are multiple groups training the trainers, and then I think that your vision is for that to scale up. So then there are more opportunities for people who may be excluded from one opportunity.
Yeah, and we had 5-minute turns, just last thing. And what if we went to a 6-minute turns? I have a clock here, so I could take it.
Would you start timing? That would be helpful. Okay. Yeah, and also I don't think we actually explicitly decided on the end time. We should go 90 minutes total.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. Yeah. So I was disappointed. I was happy that you invited me to this Empathy Circle. I was disappointed that you turned down my offer for me to invite other people, because I think that other people have interesting things to say about this and want to be involved in this. And it's doubly frustrating because part of me, is already blaming you for being excluded. And then when I try to bring people in to something, for you to also want to say, no, we don't need them, is strange. It's confusing for me. So I've had some disappointment about that.
So you're feeling some disappointment because we were going to meet and you wanted to invite someone else to join, and I just wanted to do it with you and I, and so you're just feeling some disappointment and confusion.
Yeah.
I don't know if you said confusion.
Yes. Just taking a moment so that I stay on topic.
It's like you're really figuring out what to talk about or what topic to go into.
Yes, yes. Part of me would like to go into criticizing the empathy circle structure, but I don't think that that's really productive right now. Yeah, it's I do feel like I'm hitting a brick wall, and I'm trying to find a way to kind of conceptualize this wall and my relationship to it so that I maintain my agency rather than frame myself as a victim.
So you're kind of thinking of what to talk about. Kind of you're thinking of some criticisms of the empathy circle structure, but not wanting to go down that route. And then there's something about something you want to say, but you feel if you say it, you'll be seeing yourself as a victim, and you don't want to kind of take on that role of the victim.
Yeah. I guess what I want to say is that I really like my work with the joining game group, and yeah, I'm finding it very meaningful, and I guess that's what it looks. That's what keeping my agency looks like.
So you want to keep a sense of agency. You don't want to be a victim, and that you really enjoy the joining game because it sounds like you feel like you have a sense of agency. You're not like a victim in that. So it's almost like you're celebrating. There's real enjoyment. I'm sort of hearing.
I am. That's right.
Yeah.
I am celebrating. It's good to have something that I like that I'm working on. There are barriers to that project, but the agency is there, and there's some clear roads to building it up. So I guess what's happening as I talk to you, I'm coming to terms with some of just the realities of the dynamic, the relationship, the working relationship, and I think I'm saying to you and really actually to myself as I discover it, I don't want to invest in a community that is scapegoating me, because that doesn't seem like the best use of my talents and energy.
That was the time. Let me stop that from ringing so loud. Yeah, so you don't want to be involved in communities where you're seen as the scapegoat because it doesn't seem constructive, and so you want to do something that feels constructive, not kind of be the scapegoat.
Yeah. Did you say that was my time?
That was the time.
Alarm.
Yeah. That was 6 minutes. So Yeah, so the question was, I guess one for me is, do you want to take part in Empathy Circle Facilitator Training? And two is, how do we kind of set that up? You know, what can we do? You know, I can't force the trainers to say, yeah, we want James when they don't, when maybe they don't. So I'm just trying to find some way of, you know, how do we do that? Like, you know, what are the ideas? I mean, I guess one thing is really to know, do you want to take part in the training? You know, it's like 4 weeks. There's, you know, is it something that you're really wanting to do, or are you just having fun kind of finding the loopholes in terms of the structure? So I guess that's the first question.
Yeah. Two questions. One is, do I want to participate? Do I really want to participate? Because it's a commitment. It's a 4-week commitment. There's work involved. Or is what I'm doing just kind of exploring you call the pitfalls, or the
Loopholes or
gaps,
inconsistencies, the hypocrisies,
inconsistencies,
or, you know,
hypocrisy.
yeah. So it could be both. It could be one or the other, or both, I imagine. And I would like to have you take part, you know, because I value kind of your, you know, you got a sharp mind. You see, for me, it's like you're seeing things that are sort of loopholes and sort of a lack of empathy on, you know, you're able to articulate, you know, a certain lack of empathy in different structures, you know. So it's like, you know, that's helpful to point that out, because it's like, oh, how do we create a, you know, how do we address those, you know?
You would like me to participate. You think I have a sharp mind, and that I add, you know, that I notice things that are valuable to notice around what's happening, where there may be inconsistency between principles and practice, lack of empathy.
Yeah, and I see sort of a commonality, if we're talking about commonalities, that I see a lot of those inconsistencies as well. You know, I see the inconsistencies of NVC and, you know, the political left and et cetera, you know, and it's like the empathy it seems like the empathy seems almost like, you know, it's like threading, it's Jesus's thing, or whoever it said, you know, about it, you know, threading the needle, right? It's a hard thing to do, to thread the needle, not to, you know, to scapegoat or, you know, close people off. And so it's a difficult thing to do. And there's a lot, yeah.
You see commonality as you know, between us, in the sense that you also see gaps between principles and practice, inconsistencies, and the you know, the analogy uses threading the needle. It's hard to live up to the narrow principles.
Empathic awareness. Yeah, just an empathic awareness, you know, just living, having structures that include, but, you know, protect. And, you know, it's a difficult row to hoe. Kind of when you get into the deeper, you know, parts of it, not being self-righteous. I mean, self-righteousness is huge. Like, oh my, I'm totally right. You're wrong. And I mean, the self-righteousness in the culture is totally rampant. It's like, how can these people, I mean, half the country, right? It's like, for liberals against conservatives, like, hey, we're right. How did this half the country just not get it? You know, this moral superiority or whatever. So, I mean, it's just, and there's plenty of stuff on the other side. So there's plenty of blocks of empathy between all of us. And, you know, how do we really articulate those, share them, and show a path, an empathic path, you know, forward?
I think you said it's hard to do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to find the path to just staying in an empathic presence.
Yeah, and that's kind of what you contribute. You know, you pick out some of those inconsistencies, and that's a contribution. So again, I guess the question is, do you want to take part in the training? And hey, any ideas on how do we you know, what can we do to set that up? So I guess I'm trying to bring it back to sort of the topic. at least a topic for me. You're welcome to say anything you want. But, so.
You're coming back to the topic and the specific question, do I want to participate in a facilitator training?
And how do we make it happen? What can we do to make it happen? What are the blocks? What are the challenges? What and how can we overcome those to make it happen?
What are the barriers and obstacles to making it happen?
Yeah, I feel fully heard.
Glad you brought it back to the topic. I think there are some barriers. I think it's good to name them. I want to apologize. I think it's important for me to say that when I'm scrolling on Facebook at 2 a.m. and I see you post about facilitator training, what's going on is more complex than what I write. There is something, more precious that I think doesn't come across, which is that what I'm really saying is I really care about this project and I really care about creating these spaces. And I have so much despair and frustration that there are these obstacles to doing it more effectively and working together. And so it comes out as me cursing at you at 2 a.m. on your post. And it's tragic, right? It's tragic for both of us, I think. It is tragic for me. And that is an obstacle.
Mm-hmm. So you're wanting to apologize. You're saying that like in 2 a.m, you're going through the threads. You see the post about the Empathy Circle training, and then you kind of post there and kind of just, it's, so wanting to, I guess, apologize for sort of the type of posts. And you see, it's just a tragedy of how you're kind of responding to it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the narrow question that you posed is a great question. Simple answer, yes, I do want to take part in a facilitator training. More complex question is how? What would it look like? What would I want it to look like? And I think that that's a more interesting and more difficult question. I see some possible routes.
Okay, so that you're appreciating coming back to the question, and it's that you do want to take part in the training, but it's more like a how, and there's kind of obstacles there, and you sounds like you have some ideas around how to overcome those obstacles or kind of the how of it.
Yes. And it's actually something maybe quite difficult that I would not want to rush, and that's useful to recognize. I'm surprised that I'm recognizing that.
Okay, so there's something about the how, and you're noticing something about it, and you wouldn't want to rush the how. You kind of need to kind of work on it, and maybe I'm just making a guess here. It's about authority and who has the authority, or kind of leadership, or something like that. It's like, what is the energy underneath that? That's my guess. I'm not sure.
It's right. Yeah. Let me correct that. It's interesting because I think what I'm hearing, maybe I'm wrong, but I kind of hear it as a question, like, or maybe it's an implied statement, something like, James, if you want to participate in a facilitator training, you might have to create training for you to participate in. And there's some kind of beauty, irony, and absurdity in that. And so you're right. You were right when you picked on something about authority, because if it's really a question of me participating in a training, I think it makes sense that it would be set, and I just say, I'm on board. You tell me what to do, I'm on board. Tell me where to go, where to be, what's expected of me, and I'm on board. Whereas a different setup would be, I am working with you to create a training for other people. Do I want to do that? Those are, I don't know if that's what you're asking, but that's clear. Those are clearly two different plans, activities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you're just saying two different routes for the training. Is one that you're invited into taking part in an existing training that's happening, and the other is that we create the training with different trainers and that you're part of that. I wasn't quite clear if you were meaning that we do the training together, kind of lead the training together, or you take part as a participant in a training led by other trainers. And there's two routes, and there's maybe issues of authority related to those.
Yeah, not problems of authority, but questions around authority. And actually, I like where this investigation is going.
Yeah, so you appreciate the direction that we're going with this investigating these possibilities.
Yeah. If nothing else, I think it's helping me get clear on the fact that actually that is a preference of mine. I would rather be on the creation side of a training than on passive participant side of a training. Mm-hmm. And I don't think I've been that crystal clear with myself about that.
Yes, you'd like to be not just a passive sort of the student, take the student role or the participant role. You'd like to be more involved in the creation of a training and the development of the training. And that was like an insight that you received. You weren't really clear on that for yourself. Yes. So you want to do more of the creative part.
Yes. And it's embarrassing, but if I'm honest with myself, I have fears about doing something like that. And the fears are kind of, without my awareness, driving me into my defenses, where I'm complaining to you about not being admitted to a training. It's a way of really me just not engaging with something at a deeper level, my own fears about what I really want.
Oh, so at kind of a deeper level, there's almost like you'd like to have a request that, hey, let's work together and develop a training. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where you really would like to be versus the kind of the lashing out, if that's the right word, or, is more, when you're doing that, you weren't really clear on what it is that you were really wanting. So it sounds like you're getting some clarity, maybe.
Yes. And as often happens when I get clarity, I feel sad about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so maybe a sense of sadness that, hey, you didn't clearly articulate what it was that you wanted. And so it's almost like a loss, I imagine, that you didn't really share what you were really wanting.
Yes, it is a loss. To be disconnected from myself and what I want. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, so it was a loss of being disconnected and really sharing what it is that you're wanting.
Yeah, and I feel really sad about it right now.
Yeah, like real deep sadness. I think that was the time too.
I think it's time. I feel heard. So over to you.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to work together, with you in some capacity. I don't know how that would work because we've never done it. Even with people who I think I can work with, like in that core group, you wouldn't believe the arguments I mean, it's like, I don't even know if the group is going to hold together because of the kind of the arguments that come up, and some of them stimulated by you. So I hope you're satisfied.
um, so you don't know what it would look like to work together, but you have some. There are some core differences, arguments that are alive still between you and people that you do work with currently, which have been stimulated by things I've done and said. You asked if that satisfies me, if I'm happy about
Yeah,
that.
just kind of joking. Yeah. So, it's really hard to work with people effectively. I'm not, I kind of muddle along, and it's hard because, how do you deal with disagreement? In terms of an empathy circle, I mean, it feels pretty solid, whoever it is, but how to kind of drop the empathic listening and go into, having a sense of trust and sort of assigning or taking on responsibility. It's kind of like a whole nother level, kind of, working together, it's a challenge. So yeah, I really try to design things so they can kind of run off on their own, right? It's like empathy circles, I don't need to be there to facilitate every empathy. It's sort of a process that can sort of replicate that I don't have to manage.
The empathy circle is one thing. It works. Working together on a project is a deeper level of connection and complexity. With the empathy circles, you don't have to micromanage them. Other people can easily run them on their own. That's what I heard.
Yeah, that's it. And so what I'm looking at now is just how to hold these, you can only do so much. And just developing a training, getting people to go through the training and replicate the training is kind of what I'm trying to focus on. Like I don't want to get into a lot of other different practices and stuff because it's just a matter of practicality and time, and it's like, so I'm really trying to develop a reproducible training, website that can be reproduced, that other people can just use in the same way as the empathy circle. They can kind of just spin off on their own, and I don't have to be a big manager of it, that it's
You want to create a training template that people can adopt and reproduce. Not just hold a training, but a training methodology or process that is easily reproducible
and scalable. Just like the empathy circle is, if people had interest in it, it would be pretty easily scalable. It's like there doesn't have to be any central organization running it. It kind of runs on its, on its own. So it doesn't take a lot. In the same way with the training, trying to have something that's sort of reproducible.
So scalable, like the empathy circle, that if people were interested, if there was energy, it could take off on its own.
Yeah.
People could take off on its own. That with a dedicated website or training materials, people could just access that, take it off, and do a training.
Yeah. So, and you had mentioned two different routes. So one route is the existing trainers. They say, yeah, James, we want you to take part. We had this boundary. Here's some steps. We have concerns that you're going to be disruptive, that you're not going to feel comfortable with following the processes. There's processes. I mean, I've never in my whole time I've known you within the empathy circle had any problem in the empathy circle. I enjoy the empathy circles. any issues have sort of happened outside of the empathy circle, and the introduction or with other people or posting like, you're an asshole, stuff like that. So that's where the problems have been. So within the empathy circle, there's never been sort of a problem. So yeah.
Yeah, you have never had a problem with me inside the empathy circle. It's always happened at the margins in some way or on the outside.
So that's kind of one route. And I do want to develop a process, a clear process. I mean, at least some kind of a template for, a I don't know what the word is, is it reintegration? Or, if there's somebody that I don't want you to take part, that you have some way of appeals and some way of working through the process to come. So that's one thing. The other is creating a separate training where, okay, that was my time, but I set up a training. You can get a couple of people who you would like to have be in the training. We just run the training because I want to spread it as widely as possible. So those are two sort of step approaches possible.
2 steps forward that you see are creating a process for reintegrating someone somehow. And the other is running a training with me and maybe other people who might want to do a training.
Yeah, I feel heard. That was my time.
Okay. It's interesting. I think what I'm realizing is I love facilitation. Facilitation is what I got into this for. I mean, it's just fun. I learn and I do it in the joining game every day, and I love that I can do it. And one of the differences between the joining game and the empathy circles is that the empathy circle has a what I would call, a kind of very hands-off facilitator role. And so I see the value in that. No doubt, I see the value in having hands-off facilitation. But I am having a hard time, I think, squaring that away with the idea of a training for that role. I just literally can't imagine what it involves, because to me, facilitating an empathy circle seems to me so straightforward if you understand the basics around empathy. So I think I have some questions about that and maybe some negative predictions, like this training is gonna suck. It's gonna suck because it's like learning how to, I don't know I'm just thinking off the top of my head. It's something like, learning how to drive a Indy 500 car to get ready for your ordinary driver's license test, or vice versa. Like there's some mismatch there. Like what is this? Why are people learning how to be a facilitator? Are they really learning how to be a facilitator that facilitates groups? Or is it more about learning how to host a group, things that are about, hosting, like finding people, setting it up, making plans. So I think maybe having not participated in your or Bill or Lou's idea of the training, I'm struggling to envision what might go on. And I realize that that's making it harder for me to know if I want to participate. And that's on me. I mean, I know you have video, so I could watch and find out, and I haven't had that enough interest to do that. But I just want to say, just regardless, I love facilitation. It's a topic that I come back to.
Yeah, you're really making an emphasis that you love facilitation. You really enjoy it. And you see the empathy circle as sort of minimal facilitation, actually, kind of runs itself if everyone knows how to do it. And so there's not a lot of facilitation. So you're kind of like curious, like, how would you even train that? There's not much needed there. How do you have a facilitator training when there's not that much really needed to facilitate? And you haven't really looked into the training much, so you're not really sure. And then you have some questions. Would you even want to do the training if, you know, it's kind of simple.
Yeah.
And it might be sort of the technical stuff that you're learning, you know, organizing, scheduling, all that kind of the producer role, convener role versus facilitator.
Yes. And I love that we're coming to this because it's making me realize that there's some really important truth in your question. Do I want to be trained as a facilitator? And if I'm honest, no, I don't. Because what I want is I want to be involved in a working community.
Mm-hmm.
I want to find a way to tap in to a community that is doing work. And since I see no inroads to that, I'm kind of like trying to, what's the word, you know, put it on top, use a facilitator training as a way to do that. And that's useful to realize.
Mm-hmm. So you've gotten some clarity that what you really want is to be able to work together, kind of like we're doing in the empathy circle, is, you know, where everybody's hearing each other, we're kind of collaborating or listening to each other. And that's really what it is that you want to be part of. You don't want to be like doing a kind of a training, kind of being a, you know, a trainer-trainee, maybe a trainee-trainer relationship. It's more like a co-designer relationship, if I'm getting.
How am I on time?
40 seconds.
Okay. Well, it's actually, I think it's a little different. It's not that I want to be, it's not that I want to participate in an empathy circle. I want to, this is great. I like clarifying what I want, and it's hard. And I don't want to rush it, so yeah, I want to pass to you.
That was the time too. So you're really wanting to clarify this. Sounds like you have some appreciation for the clarity that you're trying to get, and you don't want to rush it. And so it's my turn.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I was thinking maybe it's the nature of the relationship. Like there's a certain relationship where you're sort of working together as equals, you're designing together as equal, versus a facilitator-student relationship. Or there's different types of structure of relationships. So it sounds like we're kind of maybe talking about what the nature of the relationship is.
Yeah, different kinds of possible relationships, peer-to-peer or student-to-teacher. So we're talking about the nature of the possible relationships.
And the training, there is actually a website that I've been creating. So the training is laid out, kind of making it step by step. So it's, I can certainly send you that link. It's in all the posts. No, it's not. It's not in all the posts. It's in the cohort posts, but it's there. I can send you that. You can just, you know, through text. I just created it the last course, the last cohort. And so it's just something new to.
So you have texts, links and text to all the descriptions of the course.
Yeah, I'm gonna put it in the chat window. So that's the course outline, you know, the sessions, there's 4 sessions. So at your leisure, you can kind of just go through that, and there's recordings and stuff like that. So you can just see the whole setup and structure of the course. But the course is laid out where it's, you know, we do pretty much have a little bit of didactic, where we start off with what is a culture of empathy, you know, a little explanation of that. Then we go into, you know, talking about what are the values that you see as a culture of empathy. So we do an empathy circle. And then, you know, session 2, 3, and 4 is, you know, with a little bit of explanation. We do go into people facilitating empathy circles for like 20 minutes each. You give the presentation, you facilitate an empathy circle on the topic, and you get feedback on it. And then you can also dial up the challenge. It's like, oh, I want so much challenge. And at the most extreme is the James, is the James challenge. I'm kidding about that, but thought you'd get a laugh.
Yeah, so you sent me the link. You've got it laid out. There's some didactic parts. There's some parts where people have hands-on where they facilitate for a period of time. You've got it laid out.
Yeah, and then there's time when you come back and you debrief, and people can go through and share the challenges. Like, oh, I had this problem. You get sort of feedback. So that's kind of the course. And now what we're doing is there's a train the trainer. So you take it again. You take it several times. And you can kind of start helping. So when we do the breakout groups, you facilitate, one of the breakout groups, and you get familiar with the process, and hopefully people can just go off and, facilitate their own trainings. And we'll have all this, we'll have the whole outline curriculum there for them to use.
I think you said that when people take it, they can take it multiple times, and then they start taking on roles within things that are available, which is what Train the Trainer is.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to give an overview of how it works, because you weren't clear on that. So wanted to have some clarity about that. And so I guess I'm kind of curious, because it seems that part of the issue around the training is you're not really clear about what it is that you really want. And I was kind of hearing you're starting to get some clarity. So I imagine that if you have more clarity, that it might be kind of less disruptive. I can sort of imagine, we're going along in the didactic part, and it's like, hey, I don't want to do this. Let me, just scream and yell at you, call you all assholes or something. So, I mean, that's like a concern, right, for the trainers.
So, as you learn about my interest or misgivings, you see the value in being clear, maybe for yourself about,
and for you being clear, like you being clear, so hey, I really don't want to be in this kind of a situation, because maybe underlying you don't really want to be there, and then you got these frustrations, and let me go crash the whole thing because I don't want to, or something that's not instead of just crashing the whole thing, you could just say, like, I really don't want to be here because this is really not the thing that I'm into, or maybe it is, I don't know, but that's sort of the direction, that's sort of what I'm hearing. There's underlying kind of issues. If we have some clarity there, that might kind of create some grounding, for your participation.
You think it's helpful for me to be clear if I want to participate, because you can easily see how not wanting to, or participating for a different reason, would increase the chances of a volatile interaction happening.
Yeah. And that disrupts other people's learning, right? It's like, this is not a mediation center where we have a container to hold a conflict. People just kind of want to go through. And then the other thing is not all trainers can handle the conflict. Like, even though they're trainers, that you need more skill and groundedness as the conflict level goes up to be on the streets, right? It's like, with the craziness that goes on there. I mean, people can facilitate, train sort of moderate, non-confrontational situations. And you need just a lot more skill, a lot more grounding, and hopefully people will develop that over time. So yeah, so not everybody can hold, you know, big challenges.
I think that's time, but
Yeah, I had forgotten to turn it on, so I turned it on late. So yeah, okay, so you just
yeah,
reflect that.
um, not everyone can, just because someone's a trainer doesn't mean they can handle every challenge that comes. And disruptions disrupt people's learning in the training anywhere.
Yeah, I feel heard.
Yeah. Um, I don't think this was your intention, but to my surprise, I feel that you've convinced me that I don't want to do the training.
Hmm.
Um, and that I was, and that the joke you made at the beginning actually had a lot of truth to it, which is that my interest is more in um, looking for inconsistencies. Not, and it's not that I don't see the training as valuable. I may have criticisms or tweaks that I would make to a training like that, but I think that's great that there's a training for people to do something like that. And I don't think it's really for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you actually have gotten some insight that you really don't want to do the training. I kind of made a joke about it, and it was actually a kernel of truth to that. It sounds like what you really enjoy is sort of finding inconsistencies in structures or in what people are doing.
Yeah, I
And
like working together. And I think a big part of this is that I'm sad that I'm not finding a way to work together with people. And so I'm taking
mm,
out that frustration and sadness by complaining about this point about not being included in the training, but it's really a Trojan horse for just my feelings.
mhm. Yeah, so you're feeling some sadness because really underlying what you would like is, hey, some sense of working together. Sounds like maybe community or camaraderie
Mm-hmm,
or friendship. Let's work together on
mm-hmm.
something. And some of the other stuff that's happening is really just some frustration about that not happening.
Yes. I had a genuine curiosity about it, about the trainings. Um, but it's true that I tend to prefer a certain kind of a very highly experiential learning space. So I'm just thinking, like for the joining game, the the thing that's like the empathy circle and the part about like learning how to facilitate it for me, I feel like they're intertwined, and I wouldn't want to change that. I wouldn't want to do, I don't know, maybe after this conversation I've changed my mind, but I don't think previously I didn't really want to do something like create a training for the joining game. I just wanted to do it and have people learn about it through doing it experientially. And I do think that might be an important insight in the difference between what I'm interested in doing and what's going on with the Empathy Circle Facilitator trainings.
Mm-hmm.
I would get frustrated with a didactic segment. You're right.
Yeah, so what you would like to do is sort of learn by doing. Like with the empathy circle, you just learn the empathy circle process by doing. The joining game, you just take part and you learn by doing. And then you just feel frustration if there's like didactic, type information and stuff. We gotta like sit and listen to other people talk that you just, but then
Yes.
you're also sounds like you're reconsidering that, well, maybe you would do some kind of a training for the joining game. So it sounds like you're just kind
Yes.
of thinking about the possibilities
Yes.
there, maybe reconsider.
It's very interesting. Actually, it's I'm really appreciating this because I wouldn't begrudge anyone a didactic learning segment, and yeah, there is value to it. I would do what I'm thinking right now, that it could have value, and I don't think I would have come to that easy. Yeah, this conversation has put that seed in me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of the conversation puts the seed in that maybe you could do a training with some didactic aspect to it, because generally you don't really feel comfortable with doing didactic type learning. And so you're maybe reconsidering it
Yeah,
for
it's
what you're
very
doing. Uh-huh.
yeah, that's right. It's very interesting because I
I know
I
it's time too, but
oh
just go ahead, finish.
yeah, just my last thought is that I thought it was a value difference. And in this conversation, I'm realizing that there's actually, I think I have some feelings about it that may be blocking me from doing something that is unfamiliar.
Mm-hmm. So you thought it was a sort of a principle or value difference between didactic and experiential. And you're saying there's maybe some other things that are sort of blocking you from the didactic sort of approach. There's something deeper besides just principles or,
Yes. Yeah, thanks.
okay, sure. Um, so in terms of, I don't know, it just as we were speaking, I enjoy talking to you, having an empathy circle. I mean, it's fun for me. It's enjoyable. I've always enjoyed it. I appreciate you taking part. I just have fun with it. So I just want to share my appreciation for you taking part.
You enjoy doing this with me. It's fun and interesting to talk together in this way.
Yeah, and I get sort of insights, into the nature and the structure, underlying structures. I hear you have criticisms of the empathy circle. I still haven't heard one that I really, you know what I mean, that really has a punch to it. I'm still open for hearing those.
Yeah, you hear that I have criticisms, but you haven't heard the criticism that's really stuck or have a staying power for you.
Yeah.
But you remain open to hearing one.
Yeah, and I remain open to having empathy circles. I don't appreciate the being called an asshole and that kind of stuff. I don't even know what were all the different comments. Like, I don't know. It just seems like having kind of. I think it's kind of you kind of described it, right? It's like you explained being in the middle of the night. You're kind of frustrated. There's other things that you want, and then it just kind of comes in as this judgment of an asshole. There's other things that would be great to hear, like what is the truth of what it is that you were. It's like, hey, folks, I really would like to have some, camaraderie. I'd like to work together, or whatever. I mean, that seems like a deeper, authentic truth than just a superficial judgment, which is okay. It's like, you got my attention. It did get my attention to say, okay, let's talk about it.
You don't like it. When you come across a comment like that from me, you'd much rather have the deeper information about what's going on more directly. I think it's okay, but it's not great.
Yeah, I mean, it's like in some sense, I like the engagement versus no engagement, right? Like, you know, Breitbart, they picked up on the empathy tent and they wrote a really nice article about when we had the empathy tent in Sacramento. They talked about its bridging divides. There was like 500 comments from conservatives. Oh, you libtards, you pansies. It was just like, I mean, it's just, and then, you know, Milo, I don't know if you know Yiannopoulos or whatever, when he was at Berkeley, we had the empathy tent set up at Sproul Plaza before he came. You know, I didn't turn this timer on. And then I guess one of his group had snapped a photograph of the tent and he posted it on his Facebook page, which has like 2 million followers. And it was the same thing. Like just, I mean, just the conservatives can be so not articulate, so creative in their put downs. It's just they're demeaning put downs. They're really good at it. But I didn't take it personally. I enjoyed the engagement, and I said, "This is a reason for having an empathy circle. Come, let's have an empathy circle." And they all just disappeared. I mean, Breitbart, Milo's fans, they all suddenly just disappeared. But I saw it as an opportunity to have an empathy circle. So I just see that that's kind of the way you get those criticisms. Let's have an empathy circle around it.
So Breitbart and Milo posted about it, did a piece about it, shared it to their 2 million followers, and you had a stream of right-wing vitriol, creative, but mostly just personal attacks.
Yeah.
And you appreciated the engagement, but it didn't go beyond that. You tried to get them to take the next step and invited them to a real dialogue, and they all disappeared.
Yeah, and I appreciate you always being willing to dialogue, because I think that's something we have in common. It's like, yeah, let's talk about it. And I think that's one of your beefs with a lot of these groups is, hey, they won't talk. I mean, NVCA, I mean, they still won't talk to me. You know, it's the same thing. You just can't believe it. It's like, and that happens a lot on the kind of on the political left. Like, hey, we're just not going to talk to you, and we're just going to, you know, exclude you. And so I have a problem with that too. So anyway, I see some, you know, commonalities around that.
Commonalities in our appreciating dialogue, being willing to dialogue, you know, and you're glad that I'm always willing to dialogue. And you imagine that that's a lot of my beef with different people and groups is like, hey, you should dialogue, and they don't. They just don't.
And not a begrudging dialogue. It's like, yeah, let's talk this out. It's like a fun dialogue. I appreciate, let's have fun and just really hash this out. We'll have a simple, you know, empathy circle rule. You know, what, you know, I see your humanity and you see my humanity. So.
Yeah, the dialogue doesn't have to be painful. It could even be fun.
We can even have fun in the pain. It doesn't have to be, yeah.
Fun, yeah, connecting to pain, connecting to conflicts that have, or misunderstandings that have happened.
Yeah, yeah, I feel heard. And we had said 90 minutes, I think, so we just hit that mark. I don't know if this is a good time to bring it to a close, but I can keep going.
Let's bring it to a close. My mouth is dry. I'm a little beat. I think it's good not to overdo it.
Okay, cool. So. Okay, well, great. Thanks for the conversation, James. And, you know, let's keep the dialogue going. And I'm always here to explore, and I'll post this, and life continues.
Life continues. Thank you for everything you do, for reaching out. You're the one who suggested this. And that creative act, I think, is helpful to me. And I appreciate that about you. So thank you.
Great. Okay, James.
All right. Bye, Edwin.
Bye.